Right, the hydroplanes, the rudder and the stern hydroplane, how are we going to make them? I'm going to show you what I'm thinking about now. First of all, I went to the hobby shop actually, and I bought some very nice 4mm tube and some shaft that will fit inside it. I'm going to use this for all of my working surfaces in this boat. It's just perfect match for what I want. But as you can see, the shape of the rudder and the shape of the hydroplane mean that I'm going to use the same process for both. And what I'm going to use is some 3mm Perspex. I'm going to cut this. So let's just think about the rudder, and then I'll show you how this is going to work. I'm going to cut two rectangles out of that 3mm, and I'm going to rip a slot down there which doesn't go all the way through, and then I'm going to cut them that way. That's going to leave me, when I put them together, with a shape that looks like this. And then the other one, this is obviously thicker than the, and then the other one has that, and that's around about 3mm. I'm then going to glue those together, and then I'm going to open that hole out very easily, just using a hand drill through to 4mm. Now at this point, that will then take that up, that larger part of the shaft. The next thing I'm going to do is to take my plane piece with the internal hole. I haven't glued anything in. And the first thing that I'm going to do is change the shape of it. I'm going to make it look like the real thing. So it's going to sort of look like that, like that. Then we're going to put it in the sander till I get the very nice hydrofoil shape on it. So all of that, I'll do all of that to the hydroplane as well as to the rudder. Okay, so I've now got the nice shape, it's all fitting. What I'm now going to do is to take the stern of the boat and to drill a hole in here vertically and square and true for where I want that central shaft to go. Now I'm going to have to then glue in a piece of the 4mm sleeve. Now I'm going to spend a fair bit of time on that, because that has got to be square and it's got to be true. So I'm probably going to end up fiddling with that hole and working on it and just getting it right, and then holding it perfectly in place, putting epoxy in, and that's it. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my plane, which now looks like that, sort of like that. Oh, that's terrible. Anyway, sort of like that. That's it. And I'm going to cut it there and there in half. And I'm going to start working on its fit onto these two sleeves, until finally I've got one that's fitting absolutely perfectly on the bow, and then on the uppermost part of the sleeve, and one fitting there perfectly. I'm not going to glue them on, just going to leave them like that. Then I take them off and I'm going to cut the stub like that. And it'll be around about that spot, around about there and around about there. I'm going to cut those off, and then I'm going to glue those on. So I've still got the shaft, the casing in there, and that's then what that's going to look like. Then I'm going to cut those off so they're flush, and now I have it's now sort of ready to go. So the top piece, what I'm going to do is, if it's like that, I'm going to glue the casing in like that, and then I'm also going to make a separate piece of casing for the bottom one, But on this one, I'm going to silver solder a little band at the top. Now if we look down on that, it's going to look like this. This is the casing, that will be the band, and then I'm going to silver solder an arm onto it with a couple of holes so that I can mount up the linkage. And at this end I'm going to put a screw. And that's all going to go into the casing. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is glue that into the base. Like that. Then I'm going to take the shaft and put it in the top one. And I'm going to drill this. I'm going to put a pin in there so that holds nice and tightly. So all I have to do then, as you can see, is we now have a nice structure, is slot this down onto there. The shaft runs through here, slot the bottom one up, do up the set screw. I might actually put a flap in the shaft just there so that it locks on and can't fall off. And here also will be the arm that we're going to use to control it. Now that's how it's going to work. I'm going to use exactly the same process for the horizontal planes, and I'll do them both at once. Let's go. So let's make the hydroplanes. You can see I'm just pulling the plastic off both sides of this perspex because it comes like this when you buy it. It's nice to cut it with the plastic on, but after that it should come off. And you can see the slots that I've ripped in both of the pieces. And now I'm just sanding this lovely clear stuff, so it's a bit opaque, but I want a good glue catch on that. Now I've glued this together and now just running the drill through that slot to make it fit the 4mm housing, and it does quite nicely. Pretty happy with that. And I've marked on, as you can see, the shapes of the planes, and it's really good using perspex obviously because you can see exactly what you're doing as you go, and I can make that fit absolutely perfectly, which is terrific. And now that I've got that in place, I'm going to spend, you can see I've already started doing this for a while. I'm now getting this aerofoil shape on the whole thing because I want the whole thing to match, even though I'm going to cut some of this away. So you take a bit of time, try not to get your fingers in the grinder, and as you go, gradually get that looking very nice. It's very one thing that's a bit difficult with perspex is because you can see through it, it's pretty hard to really know what you've got in the end. So I've got some etch here and I'm just going to give it a coat so that I can see actually what these planes are going to look like when they're painted. And that's just a good idea. Now I'm cutting them down so that they fit on either side of the hull using my, I really should replace that blade. And here I've started putting, you can see I've got the housing and the tube that goes in it, and this is where I want the vertical rudder to be, and I'm spending a fair bit of time making sure that that is beautifully aligned, because once again this is the critical part about the boat. This has got to be right. Now I'm putting the horizontal plane shaft in, and I've got some hot glue on there. Pretty crappy stuff really, but this is just to hold it while I fiddle this around to make sure that it's perfectly square and perfectly aligned, because once it is, I'll put some epoxy in there. That will hold it for sure, and then after that we'll use some carbog on all of these slots and holes that are in the stern of this hull here. So just playing with this once again, getting it right, walking backwards and forwards, checking it, making sure it's aligned with the propellers, making sure everything's aligned. Now I've got to tell you, that's pretty darn good. I'm very, very happy with that alignment. It's about as good as it can be. This is the vertical view, making sure it aligns very nicely. Now I've put the halves on that I've cut out. It's just roughly cut out, as you can see here. But the next step is going to be to grind the innermost flanks of those those planes down so that they fit nicely against the hull. And now what I need to do is cut them. Now I came up with this rather nice idea of using both of these pieces of brass, lining the brass pieces up so they're parallel, and then I know that the line that I'm drawing is exactly the right angle. In other words, it's exactly 90 degrees to the turn of the finished hydroplane. Now, I'm sure you understand what I'm saying by that. Now, as I go, I'm marking all of these, and now I'm going to use a fretwork saw to very gently cut these along this line. This is a fairly critical part and best way to do it by hand. And as you can see, 4-4, I've marked everything so I will not have any mistakes about which part fits with which, because scratch building, everything is unique. Nothing will fit with anything else, or if it does, it's an accident. Just putting a nice bit of file over the inside of this to smooth it out, because I want this to be a beautiful mate between the plane itself. Now I'm making the lever. It's great to have a brick with a hole in it, by the way, when you do this. Just soldered that up. It's as strong as a hilt, and I'm just going to cut that back. Obviously, I've made it bigger than I need it to be just at this point in time. And now comes the moment where we start to trim the housings, just like we said. Now I've got one with a shaft through it, fitting through that housing, through that, and as you can see, I've got the screw in there that I can screw down. That's going to be visible, but it shouldn't be very noticeable once the boat's painted and so on. I might reduce the size of that little screw, which is homemade. You might notice it's just a bit of thread, and I use the Dremel to put a slot in the top of it. So there we have it now. Both of these are working, and now I've drilled these enormously big holes, because it just seems that you have to sometimes to get it right, so that the arms, and as you can see, I'm using ball joints on this so that I can get control of the props, and not control of the props, control of the rudder and the hydroplanes. Now that is an interesting process, as you can see. Now the rudder is, this is how you put it on now. Once it's all together, you hold the bottom one in place while the linkage is in the slot, and then drop the other one down on top, and then just tighten this up, and there we have it. That's turning very nicely, and I'm using the rods here to turn these the rudder and the hydroplanes. Pretty happy with that. Now I'm putting a bit of brass in there, a bit of a brass tube, which will be where the linkage goes, and this is the finished product, and I think that's very nice. I've just got to work out where the servos are going to go, but that's a very good start to that process. Very happy with that. Very happy indeed. This is the moment where you just want to play and watch.